let's talk about printing commanders at common rarity. So in this video, I want to take a broader look at the set skeleton and the pack design and distribution and how that's going to affect the design of the set and kind of thinking about it from the perspective of a drafter. So first of all, let me set the table for you. In Commander draft formats, there is some selection of cards, roughly 292 cards, that are in the normal card pool. And then you have roughly 70 cards that are in the Commander card pool. And that matters because in each of the three canon draft formats, there are guaranteed card slots that can have legendary commanders. So that makes a very big difference because of how draft strategy works. Typically, in any draft format, you want to kind of have an idea about your color in pack one. It's obvious. It's honestly like often determined by your pick one or pick two. Often, like you pick a really good card and you're like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be in that color. Maybe that changes, but often not. But you want to have like an idea of your first color, and then you're taking other cards that may be your second color. But you're not necessarily committed to that until pack two. Now maybe you're making a decision based off of what you open. And what you've determined has wheeled around. And so that's kind of important too. By the end of pack one, you're figuring out what colors the other people to your right are because of which cards are coming to you, which otherwise wouldn't if they were in that color. And so then you are imagining that color's open, and that will play a really big role in what you get past pack three. So importantly, in most draft formats, you've picked a color in your pack one, and you're kind of open about what your color two might be. But in Commander draft, now we have a problem, right? Like if I've taken a monocolored commander, then I'm stuck in that one color because of the color identity restriction, right? And so that's kind of bad. If I pick a two-color commander, I have the kind of the same problem. I've just committed to two colors. So maybe that color's not open and I get screwed on pack three and the whole draft equation changes. So each of the Commander draft formats has a solution to this problem. But I'm going to take the Commander Masters approach, the third canon draft format, which had a really elegant solution to this, which is if you take a monocolored commander, you may pick another monocolored commander of a different color as if both had partner. And that just solves all the problems. But you need enough monocolored commanders to make that happen. So you better know that I did my homework, right? Like I looked at the set skeletons of the format, and there's some general takeaways which are kind of interesting. But right now we're just talking about distribution of commanders. So let's take a look at that. There are 70 potential commanders that are in this reserved part of the card pool that you don't see in the normal card pool. You have 8 monocolored commanders for each color. You have 2 potential commanders for each color pair, and then you have 1 commander for each 3-color combination. Among the monocolored commanders, 6 of them are at uncommon, 1's at rare, 1's at mythic. Among the 2-color commanders, you have 1 uncommon, which is basically your draft signpost commander, and then you have 1 at rare for each 2-color combination, and then you just have 1 for each 3-color combination that is at rare. So this makes a big difference because the uncommons, 6 out of 7 chance that your uncommon is going to be monocolored, and then 1 out of 7 that it's going to be 2-colored. That makes a very big difference, so that your ASFAN is pretty high that you're going to see monocolored commanders, so that as you're drafting, you're more likely to be able to get in a situation where you pick let's say I pick a white commander as my first pick, and then I'm starting to take some good white cards and some good red cards that synergize well with it, and or just are good value cards. So that means I'm going to want to see a mono red commander card at some point in the draft. So because it's really common for me to see monocolored commanders, that increases the likelihood of that paying off. There is a caveat. There is like a sort of release valve if I don't get that. And the release valve is the Prismatic Piper, which if you haven't played Commander Draft, the Prismatic Piper is a bad commander. You don't want it as a commander. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't have any synergy. It's a bad creature. It's a 5-mana 3/3. But what it does has to do with your color identity, like before the game begins, basically. You get to choose a color. So this can act, if I pick that really great, white commander initially, and I was hoping to be in red-white, but I didn't get a red legendary, then I can just pick the Prismatic Piper, and that'll allow me to have the color identity I need to play that color pairing. So that's nice. But, I'm trying to think about what does this mean if I print commanders at common? Because WotC has now started to print legendary creatures at common, which I'm a huge fan of that change. I think the reason they weren't doing it before was purely for flavor. Like, it seems contradictory to say a legendary common, right? But mechanically, there's no reason. In fact, there's lots of reasons to print legendaries at common. So let's take a look at Sarulf's Packmate. This was format warping, actually. This is a format warping common in Kaldheim because it was such good value. It's a 2-for-1 because when it enters, it draws a card. It's not a great rate. It's a 4-mana 3/3, but that's pretty typical for a common. And it's got this additional upside that you can help it fill out your curve because it's got Foretell. But really the big thing here is that it drew a card when it entered. That was pretty big, and otherwise it was a decently relevant body. A 3/3 was a relevant enough body. So that meant that green was a stronger color in Kaldheim just on the back of Sarulf's Packmate. And one of the reasons is you would pick as many of these as you could, which is generally not good at a common design. You don't want that, even if you're in the right archetype for it. Like, let's say I'm playing blue-red spells. I don't want a blue spell at common that I'm going to pick as many as I possibly can. Usually you don't want that, but especially if it's not specific to an archetype. If it's just like anybody who's in green is going to want Sarulf's Packmate, it's just a good value card. You don't want that. That's bad. Bad news. But if you made it a legendary creature, see, that changes the equation because, yeah, I'm going to pick my second Sarulf's Packmate probably, no problem. But my third, my fourth, my fifth, I don't know about that. Because if it's legendary and I play my second to the board, yes, I'm still getting the card draw, but it's legendary ruling itself. So it just becomes a 4-mana draw 2 that I can pay in draw one rather, that I can pay in installments because of Foretell. That's not as good in multiples anymore. So I'm really glad that they made this change, and I've been doing that myself in my own set creation, is I've been letting myself print legendary commons, but now they've made that change as well. So I'm thinking about, I am going to make legendary commons in my set, but I want to think about how this changes, this math equation as it concerns the drafter. So I'm a drafter. In Commander Masters, they have 3 dedicated card slots that can be legendaries, which is really nice because usually you want at least one of your first picks in a commander draft format to be a potential commander card. It doesn't mean it's going to be your commander, but you want to have some option there that you can start picking around because it's so restrictive in terms of how it determines your color identity. It's really important. So if I pick both of them in the first pack, then, I don't know how that feels, but that means that when I'm given the next pack, I might get 0 legendaries. But because there's 3 options, then it means I have to get at least one legendary card that's commanderable that's being passed to me by my player on the right. So I'm looking at a total of 4 potential options, maybe 5 if they only picked one commander. Unlikely to be 6. That they're unlikely not to take a potential commander card. But a minimum of 4 options in those first 2 picks, which is really important because it gives me a little bit more options that I'm getting to play a little more creatively. I'm getting to pick a commander plus a spell that would go along with it. And I have a little bit more options in terms of, I'm really excited about the synergy here rather than just being locked into whatever happened to be in that first pack. But if I'm also saying there's going to be legendary commons that are in the set, then now maybe there are, let's say, 4 options in a pack. So if there are 4 options in a pack, even if both players pick 2 legendaries as their first pick, I'm really I'm guaranteed actually to get 2 in the next pack as well. If that player didn't pick 2, if my player to the right only picked 1, I'm seeing 4 in the first pack, 3 in the next pack. If the player to their right also picked 1, it's possible, though not very likely, but it's possible, especially if it's a common card that might not be highly taken, that I'm seeing 8 options. And the options go up and up and up, honestly, because they're commons. So especially if the common design, if these potential commander cards are not value picks, they're not Sarulf's Packmate, where every green deck is going to want to play it, or I might even go into green because I'm getting a couple of Sarulf's Packmates. If they're not that kind of card, then they're even more likely to wheel over to me. And so, now I'm seeing so many potential options that can be my commander. Now, as commons, they're not going to be very good commanders. So let's take a look at Bilbo Baggins' Burglar. This is a 3-mana 2/1 that when it enters, draws a card. It's sort of got the Star Wars pack-mate going on, and that it's a 2-for-1, but it's not as relevant of a body. A 2-1 is pretty bad body, especially if we're talking about Commander, then larger creatures kind of matter. This is a lot relevant of a body, but it's got this additional, mode where you can pay 1 mana as an adventure and scry 2. So this would not be a good Commander. It's not a very good value play, number one, but also there's no real build around a hook. Like, unless there's an archetype where scry matters or where second card draw matters, which there isn't in my set, or at least not a generally supported archetype, then this isn't going to be like a build aroundable card. Let's take a look at a bad example, though. This is potentially a build aroundable card, in part because it's doing a lot of things, which I don't think this is actually a good common design. Sorry to whoever designed this card. I'm sorry to critique it, but I think this is doing too many things, and it's self-enabling, which either of those things you don't want at common. This is kind of not what we're seeing at common. You're not going to see commons that are good enough for you to be taken as your commander, which means that when I'm looking at this, this situation of how many potential commanders are being passed to me, I'm going to be getting a lot of those legendary commons that are wheeling over to me, because a lot of the commons are only going to be good for a particular strategy. For example, Dory is best in the red-white dwarves? I'm pretty sure. Red-white dwarves storied deck. Dory is best in that. So that means that this is probably going to wheel around unless a player is in the red-white deck. And let's say I took a white commander as my first card, and I want to be in that story deck because we're now talking about commander draft format. And then I get Dory. Well, boom, there we go. I have a backup option at least as my second commander that allows me to actually play in that color identity. And he actually happens to be relevant to my strategy. So now this is getting pretty interesting. So what do? My question was, do I say that there's a dedicated common slot? So I drop this down to 10 commons, and I say that you also get 1 legendary common per pack. Well, I could do that, but I don't know that I want to guarantee a card slot. I think what I'm deciding to do is to just put it as a part of the normal card pool. So up here in these 14 creature card slots, I'm saying that I'm going to put my legendary commons up here. So now there's an ASFAN calculation that could be had. So if I say that I'm having four legendaries in each monocolor, then the ASFAN, or the probability of seeing a legendary common in each pack, is 1.56. And if I made it 15, then that's much closer to almost guaranteed 1 per pack. But I like the fact that it's not always 1 per pack. It could be 0. It could be 2. Maybe it could even be 3, which just changes the equation quite a lot for this situation where you're the drafter who's getting past, these cards. I think it makes it much more interesting in terms of being able to find a potential backup commander, so you don't have to play Prismatic Piper. But Prismatic Piper is the backup. It's like, okay, well, I'm not totally screwed. I can still play the deck that I've drafted if I have to play Prismatic Piper. That's totally fine. I would just prefer not to. And even if you're taking a legendary creature, again, it's not going to be very good as a commander, right? It's going to be something like Dory. It's not something I'm building my whole strategy around, but it's a playable creature, unlike Prismatic Piper. And maybe if I can design my commons well enough, then maybe it even is relevant to my strategy. It's just, again, it's not a build around. It's just like, oh, this happens to be a relevant card to my strategy, which I don't mind playing at all. In fact, Dory I love the design of this card. Let me just compare and contrast good commons versus bad commons in the Hobbit set. I think this is a wonderful design for a common. It's so good. It's a pretty decent value play on its own, but because it's legendary, you can't just play as many as you possibly want. It plays really well into the storied archetype, which, if you're unfamiliar, storied is basically historic and ascend combined. So if you control 3 or more historic cards, you have an enduring story for the rest of the game, and then some cards care about enduring story. This is a part of why I don't like Owen. He has storied, but he himself is legendary, so it's self-enabling. And it's a pretty decent playable card. When it does have story, it's a 2/3 2-mana card with haste. And for some reason, it's got this additional ability on it that allows you to rummage each turn. So I don't know. I think if it didn't have this ability, I would be fine with it at common. It's self-enabling, but it's not totally self-enabling. But to add rummage onto it, I don't know. It just feels like commons should be doing one thing, and that's it. And this is doing 2 if you squint, maybe 3 if you're not squinting. It's doing 2. I'll be honest. It's being 2 things. This should count as 1, I think, generally, in terms of common design, and that should count as another. And they're also unconnected, and anyway, this is an uncommon card that somehow made its way into common, but I really love Dory, Bearer of Friends. Okay, so I'm getting distracted a little bit. So that's where I decided to land. I decided that I'm going to have 4 dedicated card slots, exactly 4 in each color, that are going to be a potential commander card. So not just legendary commons, but potentially, exactly a legendary creature. I don't think I'm going to print a legendary non-creature that says this can be your commander. Like, I don't think I'm going to have an equipment at common that says this can be your commander. I think it's just going to be like a legendary creature in particular. And I really like how that affects the pack distribution, how it affects this math, and blah, blah, blah. So let's take a look at the actual creatures that I've designed so far in white, which is the most filled out color. We have Malin Farm Girl. She's a 3-mana 3/3 that when she enters creates a food token. So potentially good in a tokens matter decks, in an artifact matters deck, in a life gain matters deck. So a little bit of a glue card, although not all of those are actual supported strategies as archetypes. Like, you could have a commander that did care about life gain, but life gain is not a 2-color archetype in the set. So really the decks that are going to care about her is tokens and what's the other one? Oh, artifacts. But tokens is much more highly likely to care about her than artifacts is, I think. Yeah, probably. Next up, we have Kaepora Gaebora. It's a 3-mana 2/2 flyer that when it attacks another target creature you control gains flying until end of turn. This is just a fine common creature that doesn't really fit in any particular strategy. Rome, King of Hyrule, is the wackiest of them all, I think, and I would love your feedback on him. He's a 4-mana 3/3 that has this crazy activated ability. You can pay 5 and discard a card to create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. So potentially it's a turn 4, turn 5 play that requires you to have another card in hand, but the benefit is you get 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. So you're turning your land drops you don't need later on in the game into 2 1/1s. So obviously tokens is going to care about this, as a tokens matters or as a go wide matters kind of strategy. So that's kind of what slot this fits in. But the wackiest part about it at all is that this is not a tap ability, that you could do this as many times per turn as you want. It does come at the very big cost still of discard a card, so it's not just limited by your mana, but this is really wacky in that it's really swingy. Like, I think it's appropriate for a common ability and that the cost is very high for the payoff, but there is a universe in which this becomes really, really impactful on the game, because being able to do this even once in an otherwise, kind of top decky situation can be pretty impactful on the raid board. And then finally, for my fourth white legendary common, we have Light Dragon. It's a 5-mana 3/3 with flying, and when it enters, return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. So we're almost in Sarulf's Packmate territory, where this is a 2-for-1 card, but because the 5-mana for a 3/3 isn't very good, and it's also conditional, it's not just drawing you a card when it enters, you have to have an artifact card in your graveyard for it to matter. Then this becomes a lot more conditional. So I hope this makes sense. Like, you're not taking Light Dragon because you want to design your deck strategy around it. Like, it's kind of just like a second backup commander that's mostly there to fix your color. But if you're in the right deck, say I'm in Artifacts, for example, then I'm actually really happy to have this from my command zone, because as soon as an artifact that I want to, reanimate hits my graveyard, I can play my Light Dragon to get it back to the hand, and it's really nice that I just have that available. I'm probably not casting it a second time if it gets removed, but, that's okay. That's not the function that it's serving in the deck. So that's the idea here. I think that this is going to be part 1 of a 3-part series. If you're interested, let me know. Part 2, we'll take a look at what are the draft archetypes in the set, why even have draft archetypes in Commander Draft, and we'll take a look at what are the Signpost Uncommons that I've designed, which in this set, they're all commanders. All the 2-colored, Signpost Uncommons can be your commander. And then part 3, which I think might be the most interesting, is the consideration of what even makes a good commander design, which I'm not pretending like there's one answer and I'm an expert, but I'm doing a lot of research, I'm collecting a lot of data and from very various sources, and I hope to have quite a lot to share with you in that video. I've been polling people, I've been looking at most commonly played commanders, I've been looking at psychographic information, how this varies from player to player, and there's legitimate diverse answers because there's diverse wants from players about what they want from their commanders. So let me know, what do you think makes a good commander design? Are you excited to see those videos? Let me know if you have any feedback about how I'm designing the pack distribution and these legendary commons and other considerations you think I should be thinking about. Thanks so much for watching. Catch you in the next one.